Hello, good afternoon to some and good morning to others. My name's Joel Gordon, and we're here for another session of Global Law Experts LinkedIn Live, where the world's leading lawyers take the topic everyone is talking about and make it make sense. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to ask the questions that people actually want answered. So that's what we're here for today. Now, today, that expert is Kerwin Tan of Tan Hassani and Counsel in the Philippines. Kerwin advises foreign investors on exactly how much of a Philippine business they can own and how to structure it when the answer isn't 100%. Kerwin, welcome. Really glad to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me, Joel. It's nice to be here. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to everyone else, or good evening or good morning to wherever you are.
Wherever they are. Thank you, Kevin. So let's start with why this matters right now. So there's been a real wave of liberalization in what foreign investors can own here. So talk us through what's changed.
Okay. So before we start with that, I would like to discuss very quickly two aspects of foreign investment in the Philippines. So
Mhm.
we have two categories. The first is what we call a domestic market enterprise, and the other is an export market enterprise. So the domestic market enterprise means that a foreign investor would want to establish a presence in the Philippines to sell to the Philippine market. So the clients or the customer are Philippine customers located within the Philippines. The other type of foreign investment is what we call an export enterprise. So an export enterprise is you still establish a presence in the Philippines, you still establish a company in the Philippines, but your primary customers or clients are actually outside the Philippines. But you provide the services and you provide the goods. You either manufacture it or you process the goods within the Philippines to take advantage of several advantages, such as skilled but cheaper labor force,
Mhm.
certain raw materials that are more accessible in the Philippines or within the region, and then you export that out of the Philippines. So, as a foreign investor, you have two broad categories of businesses that you can do. Again, a domestic market enterprise or an export market enterprise. Okay.
Mhm.
So you were asking Joel about like why now? What is the changes that were made recently? So starting in 2022, there was a wave of statutory or legislative changes that happened in the Philippines, and I would like to discuss four major legislations that were passed from the time period of 2022 to 2024. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, the first is a law called the Foreign Investment Act. The Foreign Investment Act is the primary law that governs foreign investments into the Philippines. Now, the Foreign Investment Act was actually enacted way back in 1991. But ever since then, there was not much changes, meaning there were still restrictions in place since 30 years ago. But in 2022, the Foreign Investment Act was finally amended to respond to the more modern ways of doing business in the Philippines. And the two major amendments were first, there was a lowered capital requirement for foreign investors. And the second is we have what we call a foreign investment negative list. I will discuss more in detail the negative list as we go along. But for now, the Foreign Investment Act reduced the list of in the industries that foreign investors can do in the Philippines. It significantly reduced the list so that it opened up. The effect is it that opened up the Philippine economy to more foreign ownership. So those are the two major key provisions of that amendment. The second law that was amended was the Retail Trade Act in the Philippines. So the Retail Trade Act basically is the primary law for retail trade in the Philippines for foreign investors. So there are several key amendments to the Retail Trade Act. Number one, it's same way. the paid up capital was significantly reduced for foreign investors. In the past, you need to have at least at minimum 2.5 million US dollar to do retail trade in the Philippines.
I
But
see.
now it's just 25 million pesos. So right now at today's exchange rate, that's probably around $450,000. So
Mhm.
as you can see, it's a significant reduction. In the past, if a foreign investor wants to be 100% foreign owned doing retail business in the Philippines, the capital is $2.5 million. Right now, it's approximately $450,000. So a big change, a big reduction. And the second main change in the Retail Trade Act was before, a foreign investor would need to do what we call a pre-qualification, meaning by policy, the Philippine government would want to know that what is the track record of that foreign company outside of the Philippines. What's the track record? How big you are? What's your reputation? What's the sort of business that you're doing outside? Then they would want to see first if you can be qualified to do business in the Philippines. Right now, that was totally removed. So there is no more pre-qualification requirement. So long as you have the minimum paid up capital, that's it. You can do 100% foreign owned retail trade in the Philippines. And the third major amendment in law is the amendment to a law called the Public Service Act. And this was a major, major change. So the Public Service Act, if you can't believe this, but it's the 1940 Public Service Act. So it was 80 years ago before it was finally amended in 2022. Can you imagine that? An 80-year-old law that was finally amended. So the major issue with the Public Service Act before was that public utilities are reserved for Filipino-owned companies. Okay, but the issue there was the law never defined what is a public utility. It never amended it. It never defined it. So it was the definition was left to the government agencies to sort of define if they define it or interpret a certain activity as a public utility, which is not good from a business perspective because there's so much uncertainty, right?
Mhm.
And businesses don't like uncertainty. So the major amendment for the Public Service Act was it finally defined what are public utilities. And this list is now just 6. There are only 6 lists that are restricted for foreigners, but the rest are now open. So these are distribution of electricity, transmission of electricity. That's a second. The third is petroleum pipelines. The fourth is water pipelines. The fifth are seaports. And finally, the sixth is the public utility vehicles, like the buses. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you're not within that limited list of public utilities, you're now okay for foreign
Free reign.
ownership. You're free reign. Yes. A very good example of that is airlines. So our firm actually does aviation law in the Philippines. We're one of the very few aviation law practitioners in the Philippines. Before, if you want to do an airline business in the Philippines, you can't do that if you want to be foreign owned. Right now, an airline can be foreign owned right now because it's no longer defined as a public utility.
Wow. So some would say that the doors are completely open now. Those are some
Yeah,
big changes to those amendments, very big changes. And I can see why the foreign investment rate has increased.
yes.
Of those three, which would you say move the needle the most? I have my opinion on which of the three, but I'd like to hear yours. Which of the three do you think move the needle the most?
Definitely, it's the Public Service Act that moved the needle the most because it now removed the cloud of uncertainty of what
Mm.
businesses are classified as public utilities. Now, with the strict definition that these are only the 6 categories, everything else that are not within those lists, they're no longer restricted for foreigners.
So I suppose that just gave people the confidence to go over and apply. Outside of utilities, they can essentially do anything. I could
Yes.
definitely see why it's increasing now.
Yeah.
Um,
There is one more major amendment to the law, to one other law, which it's not about the business per se, but it's about how to set up a company in the Philippines. So the fourth major amendment, the fourth and major last amendment, is the revision to the Corporation Code of the Philippines. So the Corporation Code, as the name implies, is basically the law that tells you how to establish a company in the Philippines. The major amendment there is that, which is a major pain point before for foreign investors, is that before you need to have at least 5 people to start a company in the Philippines, which is very hard. If you're coming from a foreign country and you're coming to the Philippines, you don't really know 5 people to help you start a company, right? So right now you just need 2 incorporators to start a company, and they don't even need to be residents of the Philippines, because before you need to be a resident of the Philippines to start a company, to be an incorporator. So majority of that 5 must be residents. Residency requirement now removed. The reduction also from 5 to 2 was also implemented. So it's now super easy to set up a company in the Philippines.
Wow, it's become very friendly for the
Yes.
foreign. Most definitely. So before we get into the details, then how about you give us the map? How does foreign ownership actually work in the Philippines?
Okay. So remember I mentioned a while ago that there is this thing called the foreign investment negative list, or simply I'll just say it as a negative list. So as the name implies, negative list, foreigners cannot enter that industry, right? It's a negative list. So how the negative list works is it's on a tiered level. So it's not an absolute prohibition. There are some businesses that are absolutely prohibited, so 0% foreign ownership. On the next tier is the 25%. So meaning foreign ownership can have up to 25% of that business, but 75% should still be local Filipinos. And then next on the tier is the 30%. So meaning foreigners can own 30% of that kind of business. And next on that list is the 40%, meaning a foreigner can own 40% of that business. And then lastly, of course, if you're not in that list, the 0, 25, 30, 40, then it means you're open to 100% foreign ownership.
I see. And I'm guessing the 100% list, there's a variety of different entries for companies to enter at that point. And just so people have the shape of it in their head going in, is that a sliding scale or the same across every industry, or does it move sector by sector?
Oh, it's across the industry.
I see. So let's get straight into the questions everyone actually wants answered. Can a foreign investor own 100%? As you've mentioned, yes, they can. And if so, where can they?
Okay, yes, definitely. That's a very common misconception in the Philippines, that foreigners cannot own 100% of a company. So that is absolutely not true. So long as you don't fall, if your business, so long as it does not fall within the negative list, you can own 100% of a Philippine company. So examples, what are these examples? For example, first is trading. Okay, which I mentioned, there was an amendment in the Retail Trade Act, right? So the trading business, there are 2 types of trading: retail trading, which is defined as you generally selling to the general public, right? Normal consumer household goods, or wholesale distributorship trading. Okay, both are okay for 100% foreign ownership. The only condition is that for retail trade is that on the paid up capital requirement, you need to have, at least at today's current exchange rate, is about $450,000. And there are some other conditions there, but essentially you're still allowed for retail trade to be 100% foreign ownership. Now, if you're selling to reseller, meaning you're like a distributor, for example, we actually got a recent inquiry from a company, I think based in Canada. So they want to, we know that Canada is well known for its canola oil, right? So they want to distribute the product through supermarkets. So that's wholesale distributorship. Perfectly allowed, 100% foreign ownership, no problem. The only requirement for wholesale trading business is that the minimum paid up capital there is at least 200,000 US dollar. That's the only condition there. And then I've always been asked, so what happens to the paid up capital? Does it get stayed in the bank? No, you're not supposed to just stay in the bank. You're actually supposed to use it, expected to use it in your business. So once you've set up the company, your capital does not sit in the bank doing nothing, being unproductive. You can use it for capital expenses. You want to fit out your office. You can use it for operating expenses. You want to pay your staff. You can use it to purchase inventory. You're absolutely allowed to use that capital. So it does not stay unproductive in the bank.
Thank you for sharing. So that's the 100% side of things.
Yes. So we do have other quick service activities that can be 100% foreign owned. The other business is services. So, for example, one of the very popular one in the Philippines is outsourcing, business process outsourcing, back office support, customer support, call center support. Those are absolutely 100% foreign owned. Another thing that we've recently received inquiry about, freight forwarding. Freight forwarding business can be 100% foreign owned. Whether it's air freight, sea freight, can be 100% foreign owned. Travel and tours, another thing that we usually get. Travel and tours company can be 100% foreign owned. Transportation, like air transport services, sea transport, can be foreign owned. Energy, specifically renewable energy, can be 100% foreign owned. Hospitals, hotels, software company, so stuff like that.
I do have a question on that point then. So 100% owned, we are allowed to 100% own renewable energy, but previously I thought that you said that the distribution of electricity was completely out of the scope for an investor. Is that a kind of hard ground for people to maneuver, or have you seen any problems in that kind of area before?
Okay, so energy industry is quite broad, right? So we have what we call the power producers. They just produce the electricity, but they don't distribute it, right? So there's another company that actually distributes the electricity to the end consumer, right? So the one that does the power production, for example, renewable energy, you have like a solar plant, right? Or you have a wind farm, right? Or you have hydropower, right? So those companies can be 100% foreign owned, but you still need to distribute the electricity that you generate, right? So that's another type of business. That one is a public utility. So you got it right. So distribution of electricity is still within local ownership, but the generation, the power generation for renewable energy, specifically for renewable energy, can be foreign owned.
I see. Thank you for clarifying. That one almost tripped me up. So I thought it'd probably trip someone else up. So I thought I'd ask. Now the question that comes up constantly: what actually happens with land and property, and where do the 40% sectors sit?
Okay, so that is the most popular question. I will call it the 60-40 rule, because that's a lot of the 60% Filipino owned, locally owned, and the 40% maximum for the foreign ownership. That is where a lot of the misconception lies. A lot of people that we talk to are under the impression that foreigners can own only up to 40% of a company, because they're always thinking of that, what we call the 60-40 rule. So if so long as you fall outside of the negative list in the industries that I've given example of, you're fine. You can be 100% foreign owned. Now, what are these? When do you exactly fall within the 60-40 rule? So you mentioned property, right? So let me qualify that further. So in the broad sense, there are two broad categories of property: land, and, for example, buildings or condominiums or apartments, right? So land, that falls under the 60-40 rule. So meaning, if your company even if it's allowed to be 100% foreign owned, it cannot own land because it's 100% foreign owned. So if you want to own land, the company must be within the 60-40 rule, meaning foreigners can own only up to 40% of the company or if the company owns land.
Okay.
Yes.
I see. So if the company owns the land, then it can only be 60-40. But if the company is situated on the land, then there's no problems. Am I correct in saying so?
Yes, for example, your company is just leasing the land, for example, that's fine. So let's say you have a wholesale trading company, 100% foreign owned, and of course you need to lease land, for example, because you want to build a warehouse for your inventory, right?
Mhm.
Leasing is no problem. You just cannot own the land if you're a 100% foreign owned company. Now, condominiums, on the other hand, can be foreign owned.
Oh,
Condominiums, apartments. I think in some countries they call it apartments. So condominium units or apartments can be foreign owned.
okay. I see. And of the condos, the long leases, and the corporate route, which one do you actually recommend to most clients? And which one do people reach for that you'd steer them away from?
Okay. So ultimately, it depends on the nature of the business because if your company, if your business is very capital intensive, meaning you've invested a lot of money, right, to
Mhm.
build your factory, stuff like that, build a factory, build a warehouse. So a lot of money was invested. Um, Definitely a long-term lease would be favorable so that you're able to do your ROI and without the pressure of a lease expiring soon, right? For the condominium, if I would say if you're a person and you want to invest in the Philippines, a person, not a company, let's say as a person, then condominium is the way to go because you can own it, right? But if you're a company and you're just going to use the condo as an office space, normally company just leases an office space, right? So the lease would be better for a company business. But if you're a person and you want to invest in a condo, then a foreigner can directly purchase the condominium unit itself.
Thank you for mapping out the two routes there.
Yes.
So, as you mentioned, there's obviously the 30 and the 25% sectors.
Yes.
That middle tier, that area, what sits there? What sits in those areas?
Okay, so for the 30%, there's just one major industry. It's advertising. So if you want to do advertising business, like an advertising agency, right? An ad agency,
Mhm.
it's the maximum that the foreigner can own in an advertising agency in the Philippines is up to 30% only. I will link that to the later on. I will link that to 0% and why it's 30% and why it's linked to the 0%. I'll discuss that later. But for the 25%, there's just also one major area that is limited. It's for recruitment for local and overseas employment. So actually, this one is a bit thorny because, as you know, the Philippine manpower, we're known worldwide. We're all over the globe, right? Nurses, hospitality, stuff like that, right? So we from time to time there would be a foreigner who would want to like establish a recruitment agency in the Philippines, right? So they
Mm,
recruit it locally for deployment
I
outside the
see.
country, right?
Yeah.
So that is restricted for foreigners. That is the 25% restriction, meaning a foreigner can own a recruitment agency, but only up to 25%.
I see. I see. And I think for just reason as well. Um,
Yes.
so as you mentioned, you'd like to link it to the 0%. So
Yeah.
at the far end, what's closed to foreign ownership outright?
Okay. All right. So the first on the list is mass media. So media companies cannot have foreign ownership. So the reason why I'm linking it to the 30% advertising is because the policy behind that is that media, especially what we call mass media, meaning it reaches a lot of people, right? It's mass media.
Mhm.
The reason for that is the policy behind that is that Um, well, it's more of like we want to have Filipinos control what is the information that is being produced for consumption by the general public. So if you
Hmm.
link mass media with advertising, they are kind of the same, right? Advertising is about
Pretty.
content, information, um, and what is the information to be distributed to the general public, right? So that's the reason why I sort of relate mass media with advertising. So mass media is absolutely 0%. Advertising is also a bit strict because it's just 30%.
That is quite interesting because I would have assumed that they would have been quite linked. But when you think about the outlets of each, for example, mass media, I'm guessing that's news channels and things of that nature. But advertising, that would be more online, UGC, and things of that nature. So for the
Yes.
advertising to reach a space where it's actually reaching millions of people, it has to climb a bit more. So I could see
Yes.
why that's 30%. But mass media already has access to the whole of the Philippines. So I can understand why that's completely zero. I think that will make sense in itself.
Yes. Another sector that is closed, this surprises a lot of foreigners in the Philippines, is what we call, the term is practice of profession. So in the Philippines, there are specific laws that govern certain professions. So professions are like architects,
Hmm.
engineers, doctors, nurses, even lawyers. Um, so if you are in that list of professions that are governed by special laws, general rule is that foreigners cannot practice in the Philippines. Meaning, a lawyer, let's say a doctor in Australia, you're a doctor fully licensed, right? In Australia, in UK, the US, you don't automatically get to practice the same, even if the same, medicine is medicine, right? So, but no, they can't. There are only certain strict exemptions to that. I'm not saying it's an absolute um, restriction, but it's a very, very tiny exception to the rule. So, as a general rule, practice of profession cannot be done in the Philippines by foreigners. Um, Another thing is cooperatives. Oh, so there are some people, you might be familiar with the concept of cooperatives. So in the Philippines, a cooperative is similar to a company, right? It's just formed a bit differently. There's more people in a co-op, right? So in the Philippines, actually, co-ops, foreigners cannot join co-ops. It's strictly
Hmm.
for Filipino citizens to join co-ops in the Philippines.
I see. I see. The point before that, the practice of professions, that one did kind of catch me off guard because
Mhm.
doesn't that sometimes limit the talent that's allowed into the Philippines? Because I understand that you might want them to re-practice, but
Yes.
if maybe they have the qualifications, I feel like it can be quite a cap. Would you agree, or what's your thoughts?
Yes, definitely. You bring up a good point that it seems to limit the talent, right? The knowledge that they bring into the country, right? So, one workaround that most people do is that, for example, let's take architecture as an example. Architecture, they draft designs and drawings, right?
Mhm.
So, you can absolutely get a foreign architect to design for you, right? But ultimately, the one who signs off and approves the plan should be a Filipino architect. So in a way, the Filipino architect has to make sure that whatever plans that was done is in accordance with Philippine law, with building code, right?
Mhm.
So that's the workaround there.
I see. I see. So it doesn't completely cap, but there needs to be the final stamp needs to be of somebody from of Filipino origin before it can
Yes.
any further.
Yes,
I
and
see.
that actually hits a bit close to my heart personally because I'm actually dual qualified. I'm not just licensed in the Philippines. I'm also licensed in New South Wales, Australia. So
Uh-huh.
some of our when I had my studies in Australia, I did have to study some subjects to get qualified to practice to get my license over there.
Oh wow, I see. So you went through the same struggle then.
A bit, not so much, but yes, a bit.
Most definitely. Was that all for the sectors?
Yes, yes, I think so. Yes, yes. Yes, so that was the last question for now. That's at 0%.
So then, last one before we go to the questions of the public. If someone decides to go ahead, what does that actually look like? Capital incentives and the process.
Okay. Well, the first is, although we did discuss the negative list, I just want to highlight one other thing. The negative list is sort of what we call like the Bible of what you can or cannot do as a foreigner, right? But just a quick note here is that there are special laws in the Philippines that do have some foreign investment restrictions. They're not necessarily found in the negative list itself, because for the viewers here, when we say the negative list, it's literally a list. It's literally a list, right? But it's not, I would say it's 99% it's there in the negative list of what you can or cannot do. But there is this 1% that is found in only in special laws. So it's very important for you to really do your due diligence and seek professional help on the exact specific nature of your business, because it might not fall within the negative list, but there are special laws. So, for example, just to quickly go through this, most gambling businesses are not allowed for foreigners, although it's not in the negative list. Most gambling businesses are not there. Most water resource industries, it's not also in the negative list, but it's in the special laws, anything water resource related. And for example, some of the central bank or banking related services might have some sort of foreign ownership restrictions. So, but those are like more of exceptions to the rule. These are found in special laws. Okay. Now, assuming that you're excited to like start your Philippine entry into the Philippine market and establishing your Philippine company, whether as a domestic market or an export market. One thing that you also need to check is, are you entitled to some sort of incentives? There might be instances where you might be entitled to incentives. So there are two major government agencies in the Philippines on incentives. The first is what we call the PEZA. That's the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. And the other is the BOI, or the Board of Investments. So pretty self-explanatory, Board of Investments. The PEZA, Philippine Economic Zone, meaning there are physical geographic areas that are designated as economic zones, that if you're a locator there and your nature of business fits into the PEZA framework, you are entitled to certain tax incentives. So these are income tax holidays, number one. So these can range from 4 years to 7 years of no income tax. So it's an income tax holiday. And then even after you graduate from your income tax holiday incentive, you can be eligible for special corporate income tax rate at a reduced rate from the general rate, right? So we have, I've talked about the negative list. There is this other list called the SIPP, or the special investment priority, strategic investment priority plan. So again, it's a list. It's an actual list of industries that you might fall under. And if you do fall under that, you can certainly apply for tax incentives with the Board of Investments.
Wow, that's lucky for people to know. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that list is visible. And if anybody was be watching the video back, because I think the incentive is something that will also push people to want to invest within specific sectors as well. So what I'll do, the questions are open. We have run a bit over time here, but I just had 2 or 3 questions from our side as well. If anybody else had any questions, feel free to share them. But the questions that we had on our side, so what's the single biggest mistake you see foreign investors make when they're structuring for the Philippines?
Okay, great question. Usually when we get asked, when we do get inquiries, I noticed that the first question is, I want to set up a company in the Philippines. What are the requirements? But I think they're forgetting that setting up the company itself is just the means to an end, right? So
Mm,
what's important is to structure the company in the first place. And when we say structuring, one thing that's very important is in any business is tax. So they have to study the tax implications first. For example, um, who would be the parent company of the Philippine company? For example, are we talking about a Singapore company? Are we talking about company in the United States? Are we talking about the company in Switzerland? Are we talking about company in Australia? And the reason for that is because you do business for profits. And whenever you remit profits back to your home base, right, there are tax implications. So you need to structure your company in the most tax efficient way. Don't go jumping straight into the question of I want to start up a company. What's the requirement? For me, take a step back and
mhm.
see first who who would be the owner and why would this be the most tax efficient way. So my answer to that is do your tax structuring first. That's the most important.
So tax structuring is the biggest mistake people are making, and that's what we should be paying
Yes.
attention to. Thank
Yes.
you for sharing. Another question that we had: of the sectors we covered, which one sees the most real foreign interest day to day?
Oh, okay. So first, I would say is still the business process outsourcing in the Philippines is very, very strong. We know there's talk about AI coming in to get the jobs, but right now, business process outsourcing in the Philippines remains to be very strong
Mm-hmm.
because I think there's this misconception that outsourcing or BPO business in the Philippines is limited to, for example, call center or customer support, right? Which can easily be taken over by AI. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't know that outsourcing in the Philippines has evolved beyond taking calls from customers. Anything and everything that can be done by your back office in your home country can now
Mm-hmm.
be done by the back office in the Philippines. For example, we handle a lot of back office team in the Philippines doing software maintenance and development for their home office or their head office in other countries. They hire a team of accountants in the Philippines to manage their, accounting, basic accounting back office from their home country and now doing in the Philippines. Um, even law firms, there are some law firms that hire Filipino lawyers in the Philippines to do some of the basic legal research, contract review. So even legal work are being outsourced in the Philippines. So number one, I would say outsourcing still gains a lot of traction in the Philippines. The other thing is surprisingly lending and financing companies. So lending and financing companies can be 100% foreign owned. So lending meaning you're a creditor, you give out loans for interest, right? So there are a lot of foreigners still doing setting up a lending company in the Philippines or a financing company in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are, let me just see, take a look. Hospitality business in the Philippines. I would say like hotels, accommodations still generate a strong interest in the Philippines. And lastly, I would say renewable energy. Renewable energy because it was recently opened in the Philippines. Just I think about 2022 around that period.
Mm-hmm.
The Philippine government confirmed that renewable energy can be allowed for 100% foreign ownership. So renewable energy generates a lot of interest in the Philippines right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think the outsourcing one really struck a string there. I think with that, it's more the misconception that needs to be wiped away. Because now, by the sound of things, there's other areas that Philippines are looking to be involved in as well. I think the old days, as you said, the call center times, and those are over. There's a lot more sectors that your country has been relied on for. As a closer, I had one more question. If someone's seriously considering the Philippines right now, what's the one thing you tell them before they do anything else?
Oh, okay. So maybe I'll instead of giving one, I'll give three. So I'll give you three takeaways. Okay. So the first is I would say, of course, you have to check if the nature of your business can be 100% foreign owned. because right now it's so easy to set up a company in the Philippines. Again, before you need 5, they have to be residents, but right now you just need 2, and they don't even need to be resident. So it's far, far easier to set up a company in the Philippines right now. But you still have to check to ensure that you are allowed to be 100% foreign owned. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Second is, let's say your business is not allowed to be 100% foreign owned. Let's say, um, just make sure you have a legitimate local partner, because we do have a law in the Philippines called the Anti-Dummy Act. So, as the name implies, dummy, meaning you cannot just say, okay, I'm going to put 60% of my share in a Filipino name, and then, but in reality, I own it. So, in
Mm-hmm.
law, we call it beneficial ownership. So, if Philippine law requires a certain business to be 60% Filipino owned, again the 60-40 rule, it must be a genuine relationship. It must be a genuine 60% foreign, 60% Filipino local ownership, both legally owned on paper and beneficially owned by your business partner. So that's my. Otherwise, unfortunately, it's a criminal offense to be simulating some sort of ownership when there is really none local ownership. Okay. Um, the third and last, I would say, is that just be very mindful of compliances. As I mentioned, easy to set up, but just be mindful of compliances later on. What you need to do compliance wise later on: tax, accounting, annual reports, stuff like that, especially employment law. So those are very important. Just be mindful of your compliances later on.
Mhm. Thank you. I think that's a great place to close out the session today. We ran over, it's about 41 minutes, and that's because Kerwin was sharing some very valuable information. Thank you for sharing it with us, Kerwin. If anybody would like to go deeper, you'll find Kerwin Tan's full profile on the Global Law Experts website. And we run these sessions regularly with GLE members. So follow the GLE page to catch the next one. And thank you, everyone. Kerwin, again, thank you for your time today. And we'll see everybody soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for having me.
No worries, Karen.